Viktorija Golubic under investigation. What officials found in her bag will shock you. It started as a quiet afternoon, until one inspection changed everything. When officials unzipped her bag, the air around the court went silent. A single discovery turned whispers into a worldwide storm. Was it a mistake, a setup, or something darker? Within minutes, headlines exploded, and fans demanded the truth. For a player known for calm precision, this chaos felt unreal. Behind closed doors, the investigation deepened, and so did the mystery. And now, the world asks the same question. What did they really find? Viktorija Golubic wasn't supposed to be here. Not in headlines, not under suspicion, and certainly not in the middle of an investigation. For most of her career, she was the quiet artist of Swiss tennis. Graceful, methodical, and deeply respected by those who valued craft over chaos. Known for her single-handed backhand and calm on-court demeanor, she represented everything pure about the game. But behind that calm exterior was pressure, mounting, relentless, and invisible. The 2024 and 2025 seasons had been brutal for everyone, and Golubic's performance had started to fluctuate. Losses piled up, and the media, hungry for stories, began asking uncomfortable questions. Has she peaked? Is the Swiss golden era finally fading? These whispers were small at first, but in tennis, rumors spread faster than rallies. The day of the incident started like any other tournament morning. Golubic arrived early, her routine precise: stretch, hydrate, and focus. But what no one knew was that tournament security had already been tipped off. According to verified reports from the WTA event officials, an anonymous message had been received the night before, one that mentioned irregular behavior and possible violation of player conduct protocols. The name attached to that message was Viktorija Golubic. At first, officials hesitated. Golubic had never been involved in any controversy. No fines, no disputes, no history of misconduct. But in today's hyper-scrutinized sports world, even a whisper demands investigation. So they waited, watched, and when her bag was brought through the checkpoint, they acted. Eyewitnesses later described the moment as tense but silent. Golubic stood by, visibly confused, as officials requested to inspect her equipment bag. Some assumed it was a routine doping control. Others sensed something more. Cameras were nowhere to be seen, but the echoes of that scene would soon travel far beyond the locker room walls, and that's how the storm began. Not with a scandalous act, but with a zipper. Within hours, social media lit up with fragments of information. A post from a local journalist hinted that a top 50 player's belongings had been confiscated for review. Another anonymous tweet claimed, "Swiss player under inquiry. Details emerging soon." Fans immediately drew connections, and Golubic's name shot to the top of trending lists. In the days that followed, confusion became curiosity and curiosity became chaos. The WTA refused to issue a formal comment, fueling even more speculation. As one fan wrote, "Silence only makes it sound worse." What exactly did officials find that morning? And why was Golubic suddenly being treated like a suspect instead of a sportswoman? Those answers were still locked away in confidential reports. But one thing was clear. Tennis had a new mystery, and Viktorija Golubic was at its center. But the story doesn't end with a search, and it begins there. Because what officials found inside that bag would change everything. The moment the bag opened, the quiet hum of the locker room shifted. 3 officials stood by, gloves on, clipboards in hand, their expressions unreadable. For Viktorija Golubic, it was a surreal blur. What began as another pre-match check had become something else entirely, a full-scale inspection. Inside that familiar blue Yonex bag were the usual essentials: rackets, towels, protein bars, tape, and match notes. But tucked deep inside a side compartment, officials discovered something unexpected: an unmarked pouch wrapped in paper and sealed with athletic tape. At first glance, it could have been nothing. Players often carry supplements or private medical items, but the sealed label, "private use only," caught an official's eye. The bag was quietly set aside, and a second supervisor was called in. Minutes stretched into hours. Golubic was asked to step outside. By the time she returned, whispers had already reached the hallway. Someone had seen the search. Someone had texted a journalist. Within half an hour, a post appeared on Tennis Leaks. Swiss player's bag seized after suspicious substance found. Investigation ongoing. The post had no proof, no names, no sources. But it didn't need them. The internet had already decided who the Swiss player was. Golubic's coach, puzzled and anxious, tried to control the narrative. In a brief comment to the Basler Zeitung, he said, "Viktorija has nothing to hide. Everything she uses is approved and monitored." Yet the silence from tournament officials made that reassurance sound hollow. The WTA only issued a brief, cautious statement. An internal procedural review is underway following a standard inspection conducted under tournament regulations. That phrasing, procedural review, was enough to ignite the wildfire. Sports blogs dissected every word. Fan forums spun theories. Some claimed it was a medical exemption mix-up. Others said it was a banned recovery aid. One fan on X wrote, "If it was nothing, they'd have cleared her by now." For Golubic, the emotional toll was immediate. Teammates noticed her silence during practice. Reporters who once praised her consistency now asked, "What's she hiding?" Even fellow players, cautiously, privately, began to distance themselves. The strange part? No official accusation ever surfaced. No suspension, no fine, no charge. Just the lingering word, investigation. And in professional sports, that word alone can destroy a career. In one of her few public remarks, Golubic tried to hold her composure. "I respect the rules," she told Swiss radio. "Everything I do is transparent. I just want to play." But her voice trembled, and the world heard it. Clips of that interview flooded TikTok and Instagram, spliced with captions like "guilty or broken." It didn't matter what was found, or if anything wrong had been found at all. The damage was already spreading faster than truth could catch up. As the news spiraled out of control, one question echoed across every comment section. If Golubic is innocent, why won't anyone clear her name? By the next morning, the story had become impossible to contain. What started as a quiet locker room inspection had now exploded into an international headline. Tennis news outlets, gossip blogs, and even mainstream sports media ran with it, each twisting the narrative just enough to keep the audience hooked. Golubic, under fire. Swiss star investigated for suspicious substances. Officials discover banned item in locker. Search. No one knew the facts, but everyone had an opinion. And in today's world, opinions spread faster than evidence ever could. The Daily Express called it the biggest shadow to fall over Swiss tennis since the Halep case. Meanwhile, social media had turned into a courtroom. Fans debated in threads that reached tens of thousands of views. Some defended her fiercely. "Viktorija is clean. She's not that type." Others accused her without mercy. "There's no smoke without fire." In one viral clip, a commentator from Tennis Central sighed mid-broadcast and said, "It's tragic. Golubic built her career on precision and honesty. But once your name is linked to the word investigation, the sport forgets everything else." That clip alone was shared over 1 million times. Golubic, usually composed, was seen leaving practice in tears 2 days later. When asked for comment, she kept her eyes down and said softly, "I just need space right now." That moment, captured by a reporter's shaky phone camera, broke the internet. "Stuck pray for Viktorija" trended on X. Some fans begged the WTA for transparency. Others demanded suspension until proven clean. The irony was cruel, because as officials later confirmed to Reuters, the sealed pouch found in her bag contained approved recovery supplements used legally by multiple players under the same code. But by then, the truth was a whisper lost in a hurricane. The controversy had already rewritten her image. Sponsors began to pause collaborations. A sportswear brand quietly removed her from its promotional page. Even Swiss broadcasters shifted focus to rising stars in their tennis segments. Inside the locker room, things changed too. Players who once exchanged warm greetings now offered polite nods. The isolation was suffocating, and Golubic, once the calmest player on court, began showing cracks. In her next match, she double-faulted 5 times in a single game. Commentators noticed her trembling hands, her uneven breathing. They didn't mention the investigation. They didn't have to. Everyone watching knew why she wasn't herself. The match ended in straight sets. No victory wave, no smile, just a woman walking off the court carrying more than her bag. And as she disappeared into the tunnel, one commentator whispered, "She's not fighting an opponent anymore. She's fighting the weight of a world that stopped believing in her." But the hardest days were still ahead. Because when the headlines began to fade, the backlash only got louder, and this time, it came from inside tennis itself. The storm outside had already shaken Viktorija Golubic's public image. But what came next? Cut even deeper. This time, the backlash didn't come from the media. It came from within tennis itself. The locker room that once felt like home now felt like a silent battlefield. Teammates avoided eye contact. Coaches whispered. Even the sound of zipping bags or bouncing balls carried a strange weight, as if everyone was waiting for her to break. Players talk, and word travels fast. A leaked message thread between 2 mid-ranked players read, "I just hope this doesn't drag the rest of us down." It wasn't meant to be cruel. But it hit Golubic like a blade. She had built her reputation on calmness, on class. But now, every handshake line felt colder. Every compliment sounded rehearsed. Even during practice, she could feel the distance, the subtle shift when she walked in. Her coach later admitted in an interview, she wasn't the same. Not because of guilt, because of humiliation. And humiliation in tennis cuts deep. Because unlike team sports, there's no one to hide behind. Every mistake is amplified. Every expression is analyzed. The WTA, under pressure from fans and sponsors, released a vague statement. "We are aware of reports involving Viktorija Golubic and are cooperating with relevant authorities to ensure full transparency." It was meant to sound neutral, but to the public, it sounded like confirmation. The silence from Golubic only fueled speculation. Was she hiding something? Was she being silenced? Even journalists who had once praised her elegant backhand were now dissecting her demeanor. Her tone, her absence from press conferences. When she finally spoke, it wasn't through an official statement or a carefully scripted PR note. It was through an emotional comment on Instagram. "I've worked my whole life for this sport. I've never cheated and I never will. But it hurts that the world doesn't wait for the truth." Those words gathered over 200,000 likes and more than 10,000 comments. Some were supportive, many weren't. "Then prove it," one fan wrote. "You can't blame people for asking questions," another said. Meanwhile, inside Swiss tennis circles, whispers grew louder. An unnamed former player told Blick, "This isn't just about what's in her bag. It's about trust. When that's gone, everything else collapses." Sponsors began to pull back officially. Her racket sponsor postponed upcoming campaigns. A Swiss watch brand that had partnered with her since 2021 re-evaluated its association. It was polite corporate language for goodbye. The cruel part? None of it was about proof. It was about perception. And perception, in the digital age, spreads faster than any investigation ever could. Golubic withdrew from her next tournament in Linz, citing mental fatigue. But fans knew what that meant. She wasn't tired, she was broken. As one commentator put it on Eurosport, "This isn't just a story about a player under investigation. It's a story about how easily the world turns its back on someone, even when she might be innocent." The question now wasn't whether Golubic would clear her name. It was whether she'd ever feel like herself again. But just when it seemed like everything was falling apart, a twist emerged. One that changed the entire direction of the investigation. What the officials revealed next left even her critics speechless. For weeks, rumors ruled the headlines. Everyone had their own version of the truth, some believable, others outrageous. But when the official investigation finally released its findings, the real story stunned everyone. not because it proved guilt, but because it revealed how far the system had gone. According to the confidential WTA report, the object found in Viktorija Golubic's bag wasn't banned equipment or illegal medication, as social media had claimed. It was something far more ordinary, and yet deeply misunderstood. Inside the sealed compartment of her tennis bag, officials discovered a prototype recovery patch, part of a sports science collaboration between her team and a Swiss performance lab. The product wasn't yet approved for competition use, not because it enhanced performance, but because it was still awaiting certification. In other words, it was technically unregistered, not illegal, but by the time this clarification surfaced, the damage was done. The rumors had already gone viral. Thousands of posts, videos, and debates, all branding her as the next scandal. Nobody wanted the truth anymore. They wanted drama. Even so, the official report cleared her of any wrongdoing. No evidence of performance-enhancing substances or rule violations was found, read the statement quietly, published by the WTA Integrity Unit. It should have been a victory, but instead, it felt hollow, because the truth didn't erase what she'd already lost. Reputation, trust, peace of mind. When Golubic finally appeared before reporters at a Zurich press conference, the emotion in her voice silenced the room. You can defend yourself 1,000 times, but once people decide what they believe, your words don't matter anymore. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke, not from anger, but exhaustion. In that moment, even her harshest critics seemed to soften. The narrative began to shift, from accusation to empathy. Sports anchors who had fueled the rumors started walking them back. One admitted on live TV, "Maybe we were too quick to judge. Maybe this says more about us than it does about her." Fans flooded her social media with apologies. The same accounts that once demanded her suspension now posted messages like, "Stay strong, Viktorija. You didn't deserve this." It was redemption, but not celebration, because Golubic knew something that few athletes ever learn so brutally. In today's world, truth doesn't travel fast enough. By the time it catches up, the world has already moved on. Still, there was one undeniable takeaway. The incident sparked a serious conversation within the tennis community about player privacy and premature judgment. Several top players, including Ons Jabeur and Belinda Bencic, voiced their support. "This could have happened to any of us," Jabeur said. "We carry so much pressure. The least we deserve is fairness." It was a rare moment of unity in a sport often divided by rivalry and ego. And though the headlines faded, the story left a lasting scar, not on Golubic's record, but on the way tennis treats its own. But as the truth cleared her name, Viktorija faced an even deeper question, one that no report could answer. After everything that happened, could she ever truly come back? Time has a strange way of healing, but not forgetting. For Viktorija Golubic, the storm has passed. Yet the silence it left behind is louder than ever. When she returned to the court months later, the world watched with mixed emotions. Some saw strength. Others saw a ghost of the player she once was. Her eyes still carried the calm, but behind them, something had changed. The innocence, the quiet confidence, had been replaced by something heavier, resilience born from pain. In her first post-comeback match, the applause was hesitant at first, then swelling, a sound that seemed to say, "We remember. We're sorry, but forgiveness doesn't erase the scars." The investigation had ended, but the whispers still lingered, faint but sharp. Every time she walked onto the court, the camera zoomed a little closer, searching for any hint of fragility. And yet, every swing of her racket felt like defiance. Every point won. A small victory against everything that tried to break her. In a later interview, Golubic reflected, "They looked into my bag, but what they really searched was my soul. And I realized, I don't owe anyone proof of who I am." That line went viral. It wasn't just a quote. It was a statement of survival. Her story became bigger than tennis. Sports psychologists, journalists, and fans began citing her case as an example of modern athlete vulnerability, how the court isn't the only place where battles are fought anymore. They're fought online, in headlines, in the court of public opinion. But through it all, Viktorija never lashed out, never surrendered her grace. And maybe that's her greatest victory of all. Not the trophies, not the wins, but the ability to stand again after being unfairly broken. Today, when her name appears in the news, it's not tied to scandal. It's tied to strength. The same girl who was once labeled a suspect is now seen as a survivor. Still, one haunting question remains. If truth takes so long to surface, can innocence ever be enough to save a reputation? Every sport has its champions, but only a few have the courage to rise after being torn down by their own world. Viktorija Golubic's story isn't just about tennis. It's about what happens when resilience becomes your only weapon. And now, her legacy stands as a reminder. In the face of judgment, silence can be strength. In the shadow of controversy, truth can still win. If you found this story powerful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We bring you the real stories behind the headlines, the drama, the emotion, and the truth the cameras don't show. Because in tennis, every serve has a story,